She sold the last thing she had left in this world, and she didn't know someone was watching every single second of it. Margaret had not eaten in 2 days. Not because she forgot. Not because she was busy. Because there was simply nothing left. The fridge had been empty since Tuesday. Her daughter, little Sophia, was 6 years old and had stopped asking for food by Wednesday morning. And if you are a parent, you know that when a child stops asking, that is the moment that breaks you. They lived in a small apartment on the edge of the city, the kind of place where the walls were thin, the heater barely worked, and the neighbors pretended not to hear each other cry. Margaret had lost her job 3 weeks earlier. The bakery she worked at for 4 years had shut down overnight. No warning. Just a sign on the door and a final paycheck that disappeared in rent and electricity. She had sold almost everything already. The TV, the microwave, her winter coat. But there was one thing she had never touched. One thing she kept hidden in a small cloth pouch inside her pillowcase. Her mother's ring, a thin gold band with a tiny blue stone that was not expensive by any measurement. But it was the only thing her mother had left her before she passed. Margaret used to take it out at night and just hold it. Not wear it, just hold it. Like it was still a piece of her mother's hand. That Thursday morning, she put the ring in her pocket, held Sophia's hand, and walked to the pawn shop 6 blocks away. She did not want to go. Every step felt wrong. But Sophia had not eaten a real meal in 2 days, and a mother's love will always win over a mother's grief. Now here is where the story takes a turn nobody saw coming. Across the street from that pawn shop was a coffee shop, and sitting by the window of that coffee shop, with a black coffee going cold in front of him, was a man named Daniel Croft, 44 years old, founder of a logistics company worth just over $2 billion. He was in this part of the city for a meeting that had been canceled an hour earlier, and instead of leaving, he just sat there, looking out the window, something he almost never did. He noticed Margaret because of the way she stopped in front of the pawn shop door. She stood there for almost a full minute, hand on the door handle, not going in, just standing. Daniel had seen a lot of people in his life walk through a lot of doors and are confident, rushed, distracted, but he had never seen someone fight that hard just to open one. He watched her go in. He kept watching. 8 minutes later, she came out. The ring was gone. In her hand was a small fold of cash. The man inside had given her $40 for it. $40 for her mother's memory. She stood on the sidewalk, looked down at the money, and for a moment, she just stood completely still. Sophia tugged on her sleeve. Margaret smiled, that kind of smile that is not really a smile, and they walked toward the small grocery store at the end of the block. Daniel left his coffee on the table still full and walked out of the shop. He followed them. Not in a strange way. He just walked slowly behind, keeping distance. He watched Margaret in the grocery store pick up a box of pasta, check the price, put it back, and pick up the cheaper one. He watched Sophia point at a small chocolate bar near the register and say nothing, because somehow at 6 years old, she already knew not to ask. He watched Margaret see her daughter look at that chocolate, hesitate, then put a small bar next to the pasta on the counter anyway. The total came to $12 and some change. Margaret paid and left. And Daniel stood in the middle of that grocery store aisle and felt something shift inside. His chest. He had built a company from nothing. He knew what hard work looked like. But this woman was carrying something heavier than he had words for. And she was still buying her daughter chocolate. He went back to the pawn shop. He walked in, described the ring, thin gold band, small blue stone, and asked the man behind the counter if he still had it. The man looked at him a little suspicious and said yes. It was still in the tray. He had not even tagged it yet. Daniel bought it back. The man tried to charge him more, obviously. Daniel paid without arguing. Then he did something that took even more courage than buying the ring. He went to the grocery store, asked the woman at the register if she remembered the lady with the little girl who had just come through. The cashier, a young woman with tired eyes, looked at him for a second, probably trying to figure out if this was something good or something bad, and then said yes. Daniel asked if she knew her. She did not. He thanked her and left. He had no address, no name, no phone number, just a ring in his pocket and a memory of a woman who had stood at a door for a full minute because letting go of something was too hard. He came back to that block the next morning, and the morning after that. On the third morning, he saw Margaret again. She was coming out of the same grocery store, Sophia beside her, this time with a small backpack, probably heading to school. Daniel walked over. He introduced himself, not as a billionaire, not as a CEO, just as someone who had seen her a few days earlier and had something that belonged to her. He held out the ring. Margaret stared at it, then at him, then back at the ring. She said nothing for a long moment. Then she asked how he had gotten it. He told her the truth, all of it. The coffee shop window, watching her go in, going back to buy it. She started crying. Not dramatic movie-style crying. Just quiet tears that came before she could stop them. She asked him why. Why would a stranger do that? And Daniel said something that stuck. He said when he was 22. Before the company, before any of it, his mother had sold her own jewelry to pay for his first business registration. He never got to pay her back. She passed before the company ever made its first dollar. He said maybe this was the universe giving him a second chance to do something he missed. Margaret took the ring. They stood there on the sidewalk for a while, just talking. He found out her name. She found out his. He connected her with a job placement contact he trusted. Not a favor, just an introduction. She got a job interview the following week. Then the job. That was 14 months ago. Sophia just started second grade. Margaret still has the ring. And a man who had everything still says that Thursday morning, sitting alone by a coffee shop window, was the day he felt most alive. Some people come into our lives like a closed door, hard to open, heavy, but on the other side of that door is everything they were fighting for.